Welcome to another terrific Tips for Business episode. I, of course, am Terry Watkins, your host, because you can't spell terrific without Terry, of course. I'm super excited today to have Christine McAlister with us. She is a world-renowned business coach and podcast expert. Hello. We haven't had any podcast experts on the show, so I'm super excited to have her here because she's going to drop some serious podcast knowledge for us today. Let me tell you a little bit about Christine, for those of you that don't know her. She's super passionate about helping high-achieving coaches, marketers create more impact and income and attract their next clients with the power of their stories using leveraged organic strategy of podcast guesting. And you know what, guys? This can happen in any industry. It doesn't have to just be marketing or business coaches. It could be any business. You can leverage the power of podcast guesting. Christine has generated well over 6 figures as a podcast guest as income for her business. And she's been recognized by the best in the world at podcast guesting by 7-figure founders like John Lee Dumas, Dana Wilde, and Andrew, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Kroeze. Yay. Thank you. And has been featured in Inc., Business Insider, Bustle, and the Huffington Post, and on over 100 podcasts, including twice on Entrepreneurs on Fire. For those of you who want to get in touch with Christine, she has an amazing podcast course coming out soon in July, and her contact information can be found at lifewithpassion.com. But you'll hear more about that once we get into our conversation. Welcome, Christine. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure and a privilege. I so appreciate having you here. So the first question that I love to ask is, as a podcaster, as a business coach, entrepreneur, what's one of the biggest challenges you had to face and had to overcome in business?
Such a great question. I think business is us, right? We are our personal lives intertwined with our businesses and vice versa, right? And so whatever's going on in our personal lives, especially as solopreneurs, right? It affects our businesses and vice versa. And the biggest challenge that I had to overcome came for me when I was running a successful marketing agency, which is my previous business. And I was booked out on referrals. I didn't have to market my marketing agency and I was comfortable. But I knew that there was another level for me, and I didn't, at the same time, I was uncomfortable changing anything, right? Because I was comfortable. Sure. It took a personal tragedy for me to really take a look at my life and determine that I was going to figure out what that was and step into that next level. And that was the unexpected and unexplained passing of my first daughter.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Wow.
And so that happened in early 2015.
Wow.
And I was, of course, shaken to the core, right? Like I just was not on my radar as a thing that could happen. And so I took that grief and I decided to kind of transmute it into a determination to create a legacy for her, because she wasn't going to be here to do it, to do something that I hoped would make her proud also, and to really make something positive out of this terrible tragedy. Yeah. And so that was when I hired my very first coach, and I figured out how to take everything I'd done in my life up to that point, up to 35, 34, and turn it into something that would have the biggest impact possible. And that's when I started Life with Passion.
Awesome. That's so beautiful. I'm so glad that you were able to turn that energy into something productive and helpful for not just yourself, because I'm sure that that was a useful outlet for you to overcome some of that grief and disbelief and confusion. But it also helps others in such a tremendous way. And I'm sure that she would be proud of what you've done. It's been absolutely beautiful watching you and seeing you grow and getting to know you and your brand over the last couple of years as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. So do you have any like tools or habits or techniques that helped you kind of through that transition? I know you mentioned hiring a coach, which
Yeah.
is always good. I think coaches need coaches, absolutely. But were
Yeah.
there some things that that coach did to help you kind of really sort through what that next step was going to look like for you?
Yes. So I think one of the biggest things was really introducing me to um, personal development and mindset in a way that I had never experienced it coming out of the traditional university, grad school setting,
Yeah.
and just kind of associating, in my marketing business, the way that I approached it was, hey, if you want to make more, you work more. If it's just really very like linear and kind of that grind and trade this for this kind of thing. And I had no idea how I was operating, right? That I was just operating with all this stuff that I'd picked up, with all this, these beliefs that weren't super helpful. And really, what happened in my marketing business is that I got to a point where I felt pretty burnt out because I had basically just created another job for myself. I was just my own mean boss that was making myself work 7 days a week and like in the bathroom.
And all
And
of us can
so
relate to that as business owners who are solopreneurs, like, or who are doing a parallelpreneur situation. You're just in the hustle. Yeah.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And so, then starting this business, the coaching business on the side of the agency, I had the chance to do it differently and learn to operate from a place of possibility instead of from a place of pressure, right? Like, if it's not hard, I don't deserve it. If it's not hard, I didn't earn it. If, oh, it's stress and where's the money going to come from, right? Like, I just operated that way for so long.
Yeah.
And then to begin to rewire my brain really with possibility and with what we now know about neuroscience and all of that sort of thing, it was a total game changer, right?
Sure.
And has of course influenced the way that I've run the business over the past 6 years, and then of course like how I help my clients as well, because a lot of times we're kind of conditioned to feel guilty if it feels easy, and then find a way to make it hard.
True. So we kind of self-sabotage ourselves into it being more difficult than it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So is there some tactic or habit or technique that you do on a daily basis that helps you kind of keep that mindset in check? That easy is okay?
So many.
Okay.
So what I think it comes down to, and this is what I now hope that the one skill I will be able to instill in now, I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old now living daughters. And the one skill that I hope to instill in them is nervous system regulation.
Okay.
To be able to teach them to self-regulate when they get stressed, anxious, anything, right? Without acting out, without triggering other people because then they themselves are triggered. And this is like an ongoing process, right? So for me, a couple of my favorite, probably my very favorite tool for this is EFT or tapping.
Oh, okay.
There's a great guy on YouTube. He's actually an amazing person. I got to interview him last year. He has over 30 million YouTube views.
Wow.
So you're a YouTuber, check out Brad Yates. He is an incredible resource. He has a tapping video, which is it's just a form of acupressure. It looks silly, but it was developed to help people with like severe traumas and phobias to overcome them. And then they figured out that, hey, everybody in this world could use some stress relief. So it calms your nervous system down. Anyway, Brad Yates has a video for any topic that you can think of, hundreds and hundreds. And so I really just like to, when I find myself feeling stressed, when I find myself feeling anxious, just start like tapping and talking it through and like basically conditioning my nervous system that like, it's okay. We're not actually going to die, even though we feel like we're in fight, flight, or freeze right now. Right. It's actually just like a very, first world problem that we can figure out. It's just that our brains haven't caught up to the fact that, like, for most of us, we are safe. We are operating from a place of infinite possibility. It's just that the thing that kept our species alive to this point is like still running the show for most of us.
So true. So true. And we had Sophia Kavanaugh on the show last year, who's a tapping specialist and trainer out in California. So I'll also link to her show as well as the one that you just mentioned. So that way we can share that technique, because it really is a fascinating technique. And it's amazing, like how it actually works. I have a guy here in Winston-Salem. His name is Cyrus Bush. He does tapping for people who are doing presentations, business owners who get up in front of people. If you're having any kind of anxiety or stress over speaking to a room of people, even if it's 5 people or if it's 500 people, it doesn't really matter. He does the tapping technique to help them overcome some of that anxiety so that they can be their best self and show up as their best self for those conversations. So that's such an amazing technique. And you've taught your daughters how to do this as well?
I've started with the older one especially. And it's, I think it's really true that more is caught than taught, right? So we'll do it together. There are a couple little kids books that teach you how to like tap the yuckies away. And she'll see me doing it, like, sitting in the passenger seat in the car and being, Mommy, what are you doing? Well, I'm feeling a little stressed about something and this helps me relax. And like, you could do that too when you have your big feelings, So I think it's just kind of letting her see that, Mommy is very sensitive and empathic and I pick up on a lot of stuff. Like, I think they both do too, from what I've seen. And we got to figure out what to do with all that energy.
Exactly. It has to be put to something useful for sure. So I want to take a moment, because we're into the show a few minutes. I want to thank all of our YouTube viewers for taking the time to watch this conversation today. If this conversation is serving you so far, hit that like button and that subscribe button so that you can get notified when we go live. We definitely want to make sure you never miss another episode. And what's the best way for them to get in touch with you, Christine? Because this has been fascinating so far. And I know you've got more nuggets you're going to share with us here in a few minutes.
Thank you so much. So I would say, if you want to learn about podcast guesting, you can grab my free checklist. That's probably the easiest way. And that'll also connect you to my free Facebook group where I hang out. And it's a bit.ly link, bit.ly/podcast-guesting-checklist.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, we're going to get into this podcasting conversation here in just a second. So make sure you nab that. I'll be sure to put that link down below and in the description for everybody who's listening, or for those of you who are watching. We really appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that nugget. And for those of you who don't know, Spin Frogs, we are a forensic marketing firm. We're focused on helping you avoid the pitfalls in your marketing so you can maximize your return on investment and the impact that you want to have in the world. It's not about my agenda. It's about your agenda. What do you want to accomplish? So if you have questions about your marketing, if you're feeling frustrated, if you're feeling stuck, or if you're just wondering if what you're doing is actually working for you, get in touch with me at spinfrogs.com. I have a free 15-minute conversation. That's all it is. It's a conversation. And we'll go from there. All right. Now back to you, Christine. Talk to us about podcasting. How did you stumble into the whole podcasting thing?
So, such a good question. In 2016, I was pregnant with my now 4-year-old. So my rainbow baby, born after I lost my first daughter, and I was high risk. And so I was getting all this monitoring and driving like over an hour for every appointment, because I really wanted to keep, my care team. And I had moved in the meantime. And so there's all this anxiety, and I'm also running this business that I really love and looking for a way to get in front of people, right? Because I had run some ads, frankly, like way too early in my business. Like my coach had $1 million business, and, she had built it on ads. And so really the only way that she knew to teach me was to run ads. And I really had no business running ads for a brand new offer. Like I would never tell anyone to do that now, right?
Excellent.
In fact, I tell people, don't do that, right?
Don't run ads. Yeah.
Exactly. But I had kind of been burnt by that.
Mm.
And so I was writing for like the Huffington Post and some places like that. And I had this podcast pitch that a friend had sent me as an example, like sitting in my downloads, like we all have things sitting in our downloads, right? For like months and months and months and months. And I hadn't done anything with it. And serendipity, somebody invited me to her show, like an acquaintance. And at the time of the recording, I had been sent up to the hospital for additional monitoring. I was laying in a hospital bed, but I really wanted to honor my commitment if I could. And so they had determined everything was fine, but I just need to be there for a little while. So I looked at the nurse and I was like, can we just turn off this beeping and you can watch me at the nurse's station? And can I have the room for 20 minutes so I can record an interview? And she was like, okay, weirdo, right? But, she honored my wishes. And so I recorded my very first podcast interview in a hospital bed at 8 months pregnant. And it was really fun. Yeah. And I thought, if under these circumstances, like I can record a conversation that's helpful with one other person that then reaches a bunch of other people, I think this is something that I want to continue to do and that I can do with a newborn at home, between feedings, during naps, where I don't have to get ready. I can just walk into my office, close the door for 30 minutes and do something that's super, super leveraged and helps people. And let's see if it works. It sounds fun. Let's do it.
Yeah. I love that the focus, and you mentioned this earlier in the conversation, the focus for you has always been helping people. And I think this is why we resonate so much, because I'm also that. Like when I was 7 years old, got the download that my purpose on this planet was to help other people. And of course, when I was 7 years old, I thought that meant being a doctor or a lawyer, because that's what was popular back then. Like that's what you went to school for, a doctor or a lawyer. Well, I followed my dad's attorney around for a week and fell in love with the courtroom, but realized she was only there like one day out of the whole week. The rest of the time she's sitting out at this desk with like mountain high paper piles all around her. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I don't want to do all that paper. That doesn't sound fun. I want to be in the courtroom. Yeah. And then I hit like teenage years and sliced my leg open somehow when I was swinging one day, and there was blood everywhere. And I almost passed out and was like, okay, so not a doctor, because blood makes me squeamish. This isn't a good idea. So that was off the table. And then the next question was, well, how can I help people if I can't be a doctor or a lawyer? Yeah. And I think there's definitely a like self-discovery journey there of realizing like there are so many ways we can support people. And so I love that you also have been kind of on that supporting people journey. Yeah. And so the podcast experience that you had there kind of led you to not only starting your own podcast, but teaching people how to be on podcasts.
Yeah, it was a long journey. So for most of my business, it's been straight business coaching, helping people. First, it was always helping people do what I had done, right? So first it was helping people to quit their jobs and start a business and figure out what it was that they wanted to do. And, like you, I came from marketing, right? And so for 10 years, that's what I did. 5 years side hustling, and then 5 years full time. I had like a super small niche. And I mean, kudos to you for being able to do all of the things that you do and help people with SEO and beyond, and be their step-in marketing director. Like that's so awesome. And to help people, figure out how to do that for themselves. It's such a needed thing, because I was just talking to someone yesterday who was like, I'm so good at what I do, and marketing is my weakness.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
it totally is
essential.
Yeah, it totally is for most business owners, because most business owners do what they love, as they should do what they love. If you're not doing what you love, what are you doing? Stop doing it.
Exactly. Yeah. So really this became my favorite marketing strategy for myself. And I also kept myself in a box for a really long time, telling myself things like, well, you're a business coach. Like your people are newer to business, right? I was helping them quit their jobs. And then I was helping them, create like 6-figure run rates in their businesses, right? Like 10K months and beyond all this. And I was like, that's what they want. They don't feel, I would ask them and they were like, I don't feel ready to go on a podcast. I don't feel expert enough. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to keep doing this for myself, but my people don't really want it. And that all changed last summer. I had taught it kind of here and there for some colleagues who knew that they were ready. And they were like, this is great, Christine. And I was teaching it for free and just to help people. Right. And they were like, this is great. You should do something with it. And I was like, no, my people don't want it. Right. Well, last summer I joined a $30,000 mastermind. I completely freaked myself out, like walked around shaking for 4 days. And I joined this mastermind that was the equivalent of what I had made in my job in my first year as a professor, right?
Yeah.
To help me grow my business and help more people. And what I found was this incredible community of people who were like, most of them way far beyond where I was in revenue. And they asked me to teach this to them, like just workshop it. And
interesting.
Christine, we've never seen anything like this. Like, this is the best thing we've ever seen. Like, you got to do something with this. And so literally like 18 months from the first time some influencer had asked me that I knew, to teach it, I finally put out a $97 masterclass about it. And it was the most popular thing I've ever done. And that was only last December. Yeah. Like, it's only been a few months. And then the next month I created like a done for you offer around it for people who don't have the time, but they want me to help them with the method. Because what people were finding when they implemented it was they could go on podcasts and show up in a certain kind of way that brought value. And it wasn't just about like, look at me, buy from me, and they would get clients because of their intentions. And so it became like, oh, well, I could turn off my ads when they're not working and I could do this instead. And I can still make the same amount of money, like a 6-figure month. Right. And I'm just being totally transparent. It took so much work for me to get out of my own way. I created that offer in January and I did not actually launch it until April. I sat on it for 4 months. And then I finally went to my coaches and I was like, you guys, the biggest people in podcasting have told me this is the best thing that they've ever seen. And I'm just sitting over here being like, no one wants it. I can't do it. Full of imposter syndrome and self-doubt, right? Yes. I said, I think I'm going to pass out. I think I'm going to throw up. I was literally lightheaded. And I was like, I need you guys to help me and hold me accountable to this because I really think this is my thing and people need it. And they're telling me that I need it. And it's time for me to get out of my own way. Yeah. And so like, that's the journey.
It's so good. And it's so relatable because I don't know about anybody who's listening to the show. And if you're listening to this right now and this is relating to you, leave a comment because we'll respond to the comments. Yes. Absolutely. But it totally relates to me. I went through a similar thing with the imposter syndrome. And in 2020, in March, I had lost 90% of my business. I was doing one-on-one client work. I lost 90% of my business because COVID, everything shut down. And so marketing budgets got pulled. That's what people do, right? They panic and they pull. And so then I found my business coach who's doing marketing consulting and coaching at a much higher level than I am. She's about 10 years ahead of me in the game. And I invested. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know where I'm getting this money from, but I'm going to do it and we're going to figure it out and it'll be okay. And because of that, I ended up launching my DIY to SEO course. And then I launched my group coaching program. Both of those launched in 2020 because I had somebody to hold me accountable, just like you just talked about. And somebody to tell me, like a team of people to tell me that what I have is of value and it's useful and to share it. And so that makes such a huge difference. So if you are a business owner out there and you're struggling with this, find a cheerleader who can tell you that what you have has a value so that you can start to believe in yourself, because that's the biggest, most important thing.
Yep. Yeah. You gotta sell yourself on your stuff before you can expect to be able to sell it to somebody else. Like you can't look to somebody else to make you okay. Like, is this any good? Like it will be, I'll know that it's good when you buy from me. No, you need to show up and be like, this is the bee's knees. And not that that's easy, but that's the conversation to be having in your head, right? Is like, and even you have to hear it from somebody else first. Great. How can you like train yourself, train your brain to be like, this is good. This is good. I might pass out. I'm going to do it anyway. I might throw up. I'm going to do it anyway. Right.
Yeah. And that's really where that feel the fear and do it anyway book came from, is that very fear. Like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I'm going to do it anyway because I think it's good. Yep. I think it's needed. I have to be true to myself and hold that integrity in that space. So for people who are listening, who are thinking about podcasting, but haven't taken that step forward into being a guest somewhere, what's some advice that you might give them to start stepping out of their own way?
So the really cool thing about podcasting is that all it is one conversation with one other person that just happens to get shared. And they're just asking you about what you like. They're asking you about what you're passionate about, right? And so if you're impact driven like me and Terry, and you're like, we just want to help people, like you get to show up in such a way that you help the host, that you recognize the value and the opportunity that they're giving you by appearing on their show that they put their blood, sweat, and tears into. You get to show up differently than everybody else. You get to be a person of value. You get to share your story, what's worked for you, what hasn't. And it really is no different than sitting across from somebody in a coffee shop, if you're allowed to do that where you are right now, right? Or on a Zoom chat with a new friend and sharing your heart and sharing your passion. And there are all different sizes of podcasts, right? Like Entrepreneurs on Fire that I've been on twice, that gets over 1 million downloads a month. Like if that was the first show that I would have been on, I definitely would have passed out, you know? So there are over, there are over 2.4 million podcasts right now and growing every single day.
And that's not counting Clubhouse, right? That's just actual podcasts on like Spotify and Anchor and all of those other traditional podcast platforms.
Yep. Okay. Exactly. Not counting YouTube.
Yeah.
Just audio. It's a huge growing medium. And there are plenty of people who are looking actively for guests. And so at least the way that I approach podcast guesting, I feel like it's taking the principles of being a good human and just applying them to this medium. Like that's it. So if you want to be a good human connecting with other cool humans, like it's a great, great strategy.
I love it. So how has Clubhouse affected the podcasting scene, or has it?
It's a really good question. I did a little bit of Clubhouse when it first came out because a couple of my colleagues were like, it's going to be this, thing. And for some of them it has. And I quite quickly realized that it wasn't as leveraged for me as I wanted it to be with 2 little kids. And, my time, I choose very carefully, like where to invest it. So for me, it was, I put it in the shiny object pile. What I love about podcasts is that they live forever. So they're indexable, they write by SEO. They are bingeable. People go back and they find a show that they like. They're going to find you too. And there's, unlike any other strategy, there's no need to stop the scroll or like compete with other notifications. When someone, okay, question for you, Terry. When you listen to podcasts, what else are you doing?
Usually they're going for a walk, going for a bike ride, or I'm sitting here working on something that I can listen and be doing it at the same time. Probably not writing, because then I'll end up writing what I'm hearing. That's so I don't usually write while I'm listening to podcasts, but I might be working on a graphic design project or something like that.
Totally. Yeah. So you're doing something and you're looking to pass the time, right? With something that's interesting and entertaining. And if you think about
that can inspire me, or that can give me a new idea, because at the end of the day, in the creative space, it's sometimes hard to find the inspiration that you need to be creative all the time. And as marketing people, inspiration, it's a fickle flame, but it is something that we need to harness every chance we get in order to have the maximum desired outcome for ourselves or for the clients that we have. And so using podcasts to feed new ideas, to inspire new creative thoughts, that's really been helpful for me.
I love that. And you're not scrolling.
No.
You're not having to choose between a bunch of things that pop up when you Google.
True.
Right? You're not on Clubhouse going, oh, somebody else just invited me. I wonder if that room's better. Right? You're not having to choose an ad or this post or this live. There's no other strategy like it. Right? So when someone is listening to a show, you are borrowing the credibility of the host, because the listeners trust the host. They love the host. That's why they tune in. And so you get to go on and borrow that know, like, and trust factor. And they're already interested to hear from you. So as one of my coaches said to me, like, this is literally the fastest way to take someone from cold to sold. Right. And also do it in a very authentic way. Like, most people do it wrong. And so I think that's why I finally got out of my own way, because I heard so many people saying, Christine, like, I've been on podcasts and, I don't think I did a really good job. I didn't really get to connect with cool people. Like, I didn't make the host a friend. Like, the stuff you're talking about, it didn't happen. And I'm like, well, it's probably because you showed up with a transactional approach. Like, make me look good, just, aren't you so lucky to have me on your show? And no, like, you're the lucky one who got invited to appear on this platform. Like, you need to show up like that. It's a big deal, no matter the size of the show. And when you do that, people feel it. So that's why it's so fun. Like, everybody I work with is like impact driven. They have some amazing story, and like, they're just here to help people. And so it comes across.
That's such a good piece of advice. So when you're preparing to be on somebody else's podcast as a podcast guest, keep in mind that you're a guest, and think about it like you're showing up at their house for a party, and you're a guest. You're not going to come empty handed. You're going to give the host something. You're going to be gracious. You're going to respect the rules of their house, whatever that is. And you're going to talk to the other guests that are there with respect and praise for the host, because that's what you do when you show up to a party. That's proper party etiquette. Think about it like that. That's all a podcast is proper party etiquette. And you follow that same etiquette in a podcast. And I love that tip, because a lot of business owners do it wrong. They do come trying to sell something, and you're never going to sell anything on a podcast. It's like going to a networking event, trying to sell somebody on your product. Who goes to a networking event to buy anything? Nobody goes to a networking event with the intention of buying anything. So why do we keep showing up trying to sell something? Instead, show up for the purpose of connection. It's so good. Thank you, Christine. Excellent tip. Yeah. So is there something that you would suggest that you could recommend for our listening audience, that if they're going to go as a guest to a show, what should they bring as the gift or as the offer?
I like to send a gift afterward. That's one thing that I do. And you'll be getting it, Terry. It's a $25 box of tea that comes really nicely packaged. It's from a local entrepreneur. So there's that tie-in, and they ship it for me so that I don't, be overwhelmed by running to the post office all the time. Right. So we have a relationship, and it's a touch that I find that almost no one does. So find something that I'm a tea person. I'm not a coffee person. Right. And like, even if someone's not a tea person, it's the thought, it's not going to melt in the summer like chocolate does, which is, I learned the hard way. And so something that's thoughtful that, lets them know, hint, if you have your own swag, not that That's self-serving. Like, I'm not going to send you a Life with Passion t-shirt, right? That's just my wardrobe. So something that's about them, to thank them for the honor. I also really like to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, which is the big kind of the Google of podcasts, because that's currency that the host cannot buy. Like, that's such a big deal. And they're going to notice and see your name that you did that, and just be grateful. Like, look at it as the start of a relationship instead of like, oh, nice to meet you, right? I want to create a long-term relationship with you. How am I going to show up? 2 tangible things: leave them an Apple review and send them a gift.
I love that. And in over the year that I've been doing podcasting now, I've never had anybody do that. So that's absolutely amazing. It totally would stand out because it's so rare. It's so infrequent. So that's amazing. Now, what about for their listening audience? Should there be something that you do for the listeners?
Yeah. One really strong call to action is what I recommend. Now, it's different for every business depending on the way that your business is structured. Like, if you don't have a freebie yet, don't let that be the reason that you hide behind to not go on podcasts. You can choose the one place that you're most active, if it's Insta or Facebook or wherever. And you can say, follow me on Insta, send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. It can be that simple. That works. Or Facebook or a Facebook group. If you have a freebie that's aligned to what you're talking about or what you talked about in the episode, and it's already done, then of course, feel free to use that, but just one. Don't be like, well, I'm Christine McAlister over on Facebook, and I'm Life W Passion over on Insta and LinkedIn. You can find me this way. I have a Facebook group. Like, those things might all go in the show notes if the host chooses, but when you speak, give them one direction. Like, if you want to connect with me, here's the best way.
I love that, because you're following the principle of a confused mind doesn't buy.
Yep.
And so if we give them too many options, there's too many options.
Yep.
It's like you're building a house and you have to find all of the light switches and knobs and gizmos and gadgets and hinges that you like. Who really thinks about all of that? We don't. We're just like, as long as the door opens, that's all that matters.
Yep.
Right. So at the end of the day, keep it simple for the people who are listening. The simpler it is, the more likely they are to take that desired action. Such a great tip. Christine, what's going to be the best way for our listening audience to get in touch with you one more time?
You can grab my podcast guesting checklist, so you make sure you're totally covered. And that's at bit.ly/podcast-guesting-checklist.
Super. Thanks so much, Christine. We appreciate it. Now, before we wrap up, I do have another question.
Okay.
If there was one tip that you would give your past self to make your life easier, to make your business easier, what would that one tip be and why?
That question gave me chills. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think it would be to get help a lot sooner. I stayed in a job that I didn't love, and that was actually quite toxic for 5 years. I became very depressed, very anxious, like to the point where I was wishing for a car accident so that I could like have some time away from the office in the hospital. Like, it was bad. I was in a very dark place, and I had a business that I loved on the side. And the problem was that I thought it was that I didn't have a clear plan for how to do what I was watching some of my friends do. And I was so jealous. But the truth is, now looking back with retrospect, I was terrified. I didn't believe in myself. I didn't trust myself to just go and figure it out. And the month that I quit my job, finally, I replaced my take-home income in the first month. And I was like, why didn't I do this sooner? Right? And so if I had had someone helping me with that self-belief and that trust, which in my opinion, self-trust is the number one most important skill for an entrepreneur to develop, then I believe I would have quit a lot earlier and I would have had a much higher quality of life in my 20s than I did, you know? And so, but I had this mindset that like, even though I'd spent six figures in undergrad and grad school and student loans and all the stuff that's normal, right? I was like, no, now that I have degrees, I have to figure it all out on my own and for free, or else it means I'm not smart, right? So I was like checking out CDs from the library and listening to them in my car and like hoping that that was going to help me create a six-figure business. Well, it wasn't, because I was still like listening through the lenses, right? The glasses of this person who had this very strong employee mindset. And like, that was the way that you're successful. And that's the only safe thing and all the things. And so if I had put my money where my dreams were and had said like, I'm going to find somebody that I feel like I can learn from. And like you and I both did last year in the middle of a flipping pandemic, I don't know where the money's coming from, but I'm doing it. I believe this is the person who's going to help me get where I want to be. And so I'm going to behave like the person that I am going to be, rather than the person that was wishing for a car accident to, you know, take me out of work. Like, then I would be that much further along. Then I would have helped that many more people. Then I would have had that many more amazing experiences, and my business would be making a greater impact. And so frankly, like, that's why I've dedicated my life to coaching, is because I know of the impact it had on my life, right? Like if this is the biggest impact someone had on my life, of course I'm going to do that for other people. Right. And so I would love to tell, you know, 23-year-old Christine, like, just stop it. Just hire somebody and stop the stubbornness, and, you know, and you're going to be so much happier.
I love it, because it's so true. I mean, I did the same thing. Spin Frogs isn't my first rodeo when it comes to business ownership. I did it once before. I was 26 when I did it the first time. And I ended up rolling it up into an agency, because instead of investing in a coach, instead of investing in the continuing education or the summit or the workshop or the seminar or the whatever, I thought that I needed to figure it out on my own. But we don't need to figure it out on our own, y'all. If you're listening to this still, you don't need to figure it out on your own. You might be in business for yourself, but you are not by yourself. And these resources are out here to support you. There are coaches, there are podcasts. Yes, there's a bunch of free stuff out there. But sometimes we need to put our money where our mouth is. And we need to invest in ourselves, because that's really what we're doing. When we invest in a good coach like Christine, when we invest in a good coach, we are putting our money where our mouth is. And we are saying that we are worth it. And you all are worth it. Everybody who's listening is totally worth it. Whatever that investment looks like, find a way, because you're worth it. And what you want to see happen is totally possible. It's just a matter of the how. And there is somebody out there who knows exactly how. It's just a matter of finding that person and following that yellow brick road so that you too can have that life that you're looking for. Christine, this has been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for all of your advice and your insights.
Thank you for having me. I loved it.
Yes, absolutely. Is there anything else that you'd like our listening audience to hear, know, understand about you and what you have to offer?
I think the biggest thing that I would say is like, just remember that you always have a choice, right? This isn't about me, but like, it is, because this is the reason I'm still standing right after losing my daughter, is like, we have the ultimate power, which is the power of choice. We have the ultimate opportunity because we have the internet. Like, it really is just aligning your brain to the possibilities in front of you. And like, look what happens. Like, your world will open. There's plenty of space for you in your dream job, in your niche, right? To grow as big as you want. Like, Terry's got you on the marketing side. So do what she says. And yeah, trust yourself one day at a time.
Yeah. So good. So good. Thank you so much. And for those of you who are listening, if this has served you today, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode. And if you're feeling like you're on a desert island in business by yourself, for yourself, reach out to me at Spin Frogs. Let's have a conversation. It's no obligation. I just want to be your friend. And if I can point you in a direction that helps serve you and support you, that's what I'm here for. I am your back pocket resource when it comes to your marketing, so I can help you catch the ideas that stick. Until next time, everybody, I look forward to it. Have a wonderful week. Bye.